having had a serious class section on the English language, I think it's about time we began to look into how we are going to apply some of the things we have learned. Now that will take us into the study of past question papers. Now, we shall take these questions section by section. And now the first focus would be on comprehension. So, we shall be focusing on past question papers on comprehension passages from 1990 down to 2015. I'm sure with that we'll be able to a very large extent apply some of the things we have learned during the English language learning section. And now, like I said earlier, the focus will be on 1990 to 2015. So, let's start. The first thing is, what are you expected to do before you answer questions on comprehension passages? Some have argued that it is best to read the questions first so that you are armed as you read through the passage. Some have argued too that it is better to read the passage first before you delve into the question. Whichever one you decide to settle for is your choice. But what remains true is that you are meant to read the passage carefully. It's always instruction before you start, that you read the passage carefully before you answer the question. Now, these are some of the things you need to note. There is a temptation to carry a foreknowledge of the passage into the passage. By that I mean, there is a temptation to begin to think ahead of the author of the passage you are reading. One thing is very, very important. And what is that? That you take whatever it is the passage says, hook, line, and sinker. How do I mean? You do not have to impute meaning, because oftentimes the question goes according to the passage. So if, for instance, the passage says that one of the means of transportation is dog, that the dog is used as a means of transportation. And the question says, dash is a means of transportation. Dog, car, airplanes, and ship as SHIP. Obviously from the passage, the answer is dog. You are not supposed to say, I for one know that dogs are not used as means of transportation. But if the passage says so, who are you to argue with the author? So you are not supposed to impute meaning. Whatever meaning you want to derive from a passage should be within the ambit of the passage. And so you read the passage carefully with a view to understanding the message of the passage. You need to digest the message of the passage before you begin to answer the question. In fact, it gets to the point where you understand the passage so much so that you may not even need to refer to the passage again before you get to your answers. And so I said this, it is important to understand the passage. It's important to understand what message the author of the passage is trying to convey. It is equally important you understand if the message in the passage or if the comprehension passage is adapted or originates from the author himself. These are very important points to note if you are to digest the message of the passage. Now, to be able to understand exactly what we're talking about, it is better you understand that the comprehension passage demands you understand the passage. Of course, that's the import of comprehension. Again, you must answer questions on synonymy, which means you would be expected to get words that would be used to replace certain words as used in the passage. You would equally be expected to give the grammatical name of selected group of words, and of course what they do in that context, and that's the function. These are some of the questions you need to answer by the time you're through reading the comprehension passage. I'm sure you're wondering if we're going to be reading a comprehension passage in this section. We shall be reading comprehension passages from the year 1990 and of course down to the year 2015. And for the sake of convenience, we shall be picking one comprehension passage for each year. So for 1990, we shall be focusing on the first comprehension passage. And we shall be running that until we get to the year 2015. Now very quickly, let's go to the comprehension passage, the year 1990. And that the instruction there says, answer all the questions in this part, and that is part B, section 1. The next instruction says, read the following passage carefully and then answer the questions which follow. So we shall then, in this section, read the passage carefully, and then of course we shall now go into the answering of the questions. So we go now. I'm sure you're listening. Okay. Though Hitler is dead, many mysteries about him remain unraveled, especially the mystery of how he was able to rise to supreme power, the source of his strength, the nature of his ultimate beliefs, and the workings of his fatal weaknesses. All these will be debated for many years to come. No final assessment could be made at the time, nor can we reasonably expect to reach a final assessment in our generation. Hitler's verdict on himself was given in the testament he drew up the day before his suicide. It is an astonishing and revealing document. Having sacrificed millions of Germans to his own glory, he claimed that all his actions had proceeded out of love and loyalty to his people. With perfect detachment and single-mindedness, he claimed that he had shown the German people the way which destiny had pointed out to them, and it was not his fault that they had proved unworthy of the task. He urged the Germans to continue the struggle. While he was dictating these words, the Russians had encircled Berlin, and the Chancellery was being bombarded by Russian guns at close range. Hitler wrote that he chose to die by his own hand rather than submit to cowardly abdication or capitulation. But most revealing paragraph of his testament referred to his possessions, which he bequeathed to the party, or if the party was no longer in existence, to the state. Should the state be destroyed, no further decision on my part is necessary. And that is the passage. We want to understand a few things about the passage before we go into the questions. First, this passage has one character in focus, and that character is Hitler. The passage tells us the story of the totalitarian, or if you like, the leader of the former USSR, who was regarded as someone who was high-handed in authority, who ruled his people with rock and diamond mind, who frustrated the people of Germany, killed a whole lot of them. Of course, the story of Germany is being painted, Hitler rather, is being painted here, and of course, how he committed suicide and how he refused to be captured. These are the things the author has painted here. And now by the time we go through the questions, we will show our understanding proper of this passage. And so we go straight into the question. The first question says, from the passage, what type of ruler was Hitler during his life? How would you answer this? Of course, it is obvious that the answer to this question is that Hitler was an authoritarian ruler. He was a totalitarian ruler. He was a leader who ruled his people with high-handedness. So, the answer to this question is simple. Hitler was an authoritarian leader. Of course, he was a politician. Question B. How did Hitler die? How would you answer this question? Hitler died by committing suicide. The answer to this question would not be complete if you said suicide. No, you were to answer your question in a full-blown sentence. And so the answer becomes Hitler died by committing suicide, or simply by killing himself. The I part of that question B rather says why. That means, why did Hitler die by committing suicide? It is simple. Because he does not want to be captured alive. He does not want to be captured alive. Hitler died by committing suicide because he does not want to be captured alive. The C part of the question says, what was the last thing Hitler did before his death? The answer to that question is that Hitler wrote his will and apportioned his property to the state and of course to the party. If the state is no longer, if the party is no longer in existence, then to the state. So before he died, he wrote his will. D part of the question says, at the time of his death, how was Germany performing in the war? Of course, as we have read here, Germany was already losing the war. So as at the time of the death of Hitler, Germany was already losing the war. The E part of the question says, what two options did Hitler give for disposing of his possession? Hitler ordered in his will that his possession be given to either the state or the party. These were the two options given. The F part of the question says, for each of the following words, find another word or phrase that means the same and which can replace it in the passage. Now, we shall pick the word. Now, we'll go to the passage and find out the suitability or otherwise of the word